The Minimalists are once again going on tour. This is our 10th tour in 10 years. It is called the Less Coast Tour. We'll be hitting 8 cities across the west coast of the United States and Canada. For more details, head on over to theminimalists.com/tour. We'll see you soon.
The Minimalists.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Minimalist Podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn.
And I'm Ryan Nicodemus, and together we are the Minimalists.
Today, we're going to talk about student debt. We're going to talk about graduating from a university without any debt at all. And we're going to talk about tips for avoiding college debt altogether with today's guest. Anthony ONeal is back. Anthony is the author of Debt-Free Degree. It's a new book. I'll hold it up if you're watching on YouTube here. Anthony, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, man. Thanks for being here.
My brothers, man.
It's good to see you, man.
He's back.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Last time we saw you was when we were in Nashville, right?
Nashville. Then I did y'all's podcast at a theater.
Birmingham, right?
Birmingham. That's
Yes.
right. Yeah.
Yes. So we've been together a lot, man. Last time we seen each other, I had to beat y'all in Top Golf. But other than that,
Oh my God, I'm so awful at golf. I feel bad when people ask me to play any type of golf because they expect like maybe some type of competitive level, and I've just got I got nothing.
You know, I'm excited for this episode because we get so many questions about debt with respect to going to college.
Yeah.
And so many people, they just assume they have to take on 5 or even 6 figures worth of debt.
Well, it feels like one of those good excuses, right? Like, oh, it's okay to go into debt because I'm working towards a degree, and that degree will help me graduate, and then I can start to pay off the debt that I've accumulated to get the degree.
and so many people are doing it, Anthony, I think because so many other people are doing it.
It's normal. I mean, we see it right now, $1.6 trillion in student loan debt. Wow. So it's normal. But when we really step back and look at it, normal is not setting up our young people to succeed and win. Not just young people, just people in general who take out student loans.
Amen. And
something you said, Ryan, was that, a lot of people think they'll get the money and they'll get a job and pay back their student loans. But studies is also showing, man, that nearly 20 years after they graduate college, they still owe 50% of the original student loan balance.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
So it's like they're not getting the jobs. They're not getting the income to pay it off.
Well, let's hop into some of these questions here. We have a bunch of questions from our audience. The first one is from Gwen in, a college town, Athens, Ohio.
Yeah.
Hi, Josh and Ryan. My name's Gwen, and I'm from Athens, Ohio. What do you think about continuing education? So, again, I'm a senior getting my bachelor's of music, and I'm striving for a PhD. But I know I'm going to go into debt. I know it's going to cause stress, and I'm not sure if it's going to add value to my life or my life's work. So just your thoughts. Thanks.
All right, Anthony, so I think she's right about one thing. If she goes into debt, it is going to cause stress. Yeah. But she said, I know I'm going to go into debt, and that's the regular attitude. And in your book, Debt-Free Degree, I mean, it says it all in the title, but in the book itself, and we're going to dive in a little bit more into the book here in a bit, but you outline a plan that, hey, you can get a degree without going into debt.
Yeah, when I listen to Gwen, the very first thing she says is, I know I'm going to get into debt. She says, I know it's going to cause stress, but then let's listen to the third part she said right there. I do not know if it's going to add value to me. And so my very first thing is, before I even go into college, you guys, I'm taking debt off of the table. I'm taking student loans off of the table. Now, I'm not against continued education. If you want to get your master's, your PhD, that's great. But let's step back and let's do a vision. Let's have a plan and see and assess, is me going back to school, will this add value to me? Will it bring in more income? Or am I just doing it just because? Because if you go get a master's degree, you may come out making an extra $10,000, $20,000 a year, but it's going to cost you another $100,000. Right. So is that a good ROI? No, it's not. So for Gwen, and to everyone else listening, I would say let's step back. 1, take debt off of the table, come up with a plan, and let's do the research and make sure that if we continue the education, is it bringing value, no stress, and more income?
Yeah, the worst reason she could go to college is just because. I know a lot of people who will stay in continuing education just to avoid paying back their student loans.
Oh my God.
Which is even a worse plan, because it's like, oh, I'm going to stay in school, accumulate more debt so I can avoid paying this debt that I've already incurred. So Gwen, yeah, I mean, my advice is like, you got to get behind the why. Like, why do you want that PhD? If it's just because you've got to, you talk about the warning signs. Yeah. So you talk about imagining yourself. I did too when I was reading that, with you in an orange vest with like the air traffic controller lights. Like, this is a clear warning sign. Like, yeah, Gwen, you've got to rethink about what you're going to do with this decision. Now, there may be a really good reason, but you got to figure out what that reason is. It isn't just because, and it certainly isn't to avoid student debt that you've already incurred.
And if the reason is so you can have 3 additional letters behind your name, or you can call yourself doctor, that's not a very good reason.
I call you Dr. Milburn all the time. You don't have a PhD.
Thanks, Dr. Nicodemus. All right. So I think when we're talking to Gwen, Anthony's absolutely right. There are 3 components here. Is this going to stress me out? Mm-hmm. If so, how do I eliminate the stress? Well, it's that first component of if I can go without debt. Now, I often have people tell me, Anthony, they'll say, well, I know I'm going to have to accumulate debt to become a nurse. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, okay, let me ask you this. Has there ever been anyone in the history of nursing who has gone to college, gotten their degree without any debt? And they'll say, well, yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of people who've done it. Oh, well, then you have plenty of recipes right there, right?
Yeah, plenty of them, man. It just last week, Dave and I were talking about this.
This is Dave Ramsey he's talking about, by the way.
Oh, yeah, my mentor, Dave Ramsey. And we was interviewing 6 students, and one of them went to school and got her nursing degree 100% debt-free. And it's so funny when I hear people like that say, I have to go into debt. I met a young lady who got her PhD 100% debt-free. Here's the thing. People just do not want to work. They don't want to put the hard work and be patient behind it. They want the quick fix microwave process to get in their degree.
Well, what's interesting too is like people want the quick fix and they tell themselves, I'll work harder later.
Yep.
So I'm gonna go ahead and do the easy thing now, but then when I get that degree, I'm gonna work really, really hard and pay off that debt fast. It's like, work hard now. Like that, if you're not willing to work hard now, you're probably not willing to work hard later.
Debt is making your future self suffer for your current indiscretions. Ooh, you could tweet that podcast, Sean.
Yes.
And so the last thing I want to talk to Gwen about are values. She said, I don't know if this is going to add value to anyone's life. That is because you may not be clear on what your values are right now and how you can best contribute to the world around you. Maybe that is by obtaining your PhD, and that's going to be a way for you to contribute. If so, great. There is going to be a debt-free way for you to do that. But let's say you do get through college and you get your PhD and you're debt-free, but then you still don't use it. Well, then you've kind of wasted your time, right? And it's okay to realize I've wasted some time up until now. Those are sunk costs. You can always pivot away so you don't have to continue wasting your time going forward. Yeah. Gwen, I want to send you a copy of Debt-Free Degree. I think you're really going to enjoy it. I think you'll get a lot of value from that. It'll help you make some decisions. Also, if you check out our Values podcast, it's episode number 69. You'll find some value in that because we go into getting really clear on what your values are. Oh, and our next question is from Mara in Australia.
Hi, Josh and Ryan. My name is Mara. I'm 19 years old and I'm from Byron Bay, Australia. Throughout your financial podcast and whenever anyone asks you about college debt, you often tell them to find people who have completed the degree that they want to do and to try and get advice off them or follow their recipe. But where can I find someone that's done a degree that I want to do? Is there a platform?
Mara, the good news is you don't have to find someone who has done your degree exactly. I mean, yes, Josh and I, we have in the past recommended, I remember one specific event, someone was talking about being a lawyer and they were like, oh man, I really want to be a lawyer. I got to go to college for that. I got to go into debt. And we were like, no, like you don't. You could probably find a lawyer who has gone through it. We were just saying with the last question, you could probably find a nurse. In fact, I remember at that event, someone was raising their hand. They're like, talk to me after this event because I did exactly that.
Right.
So with Mara, we don't know exactly what she's going for. She didn't say that, but let's just say she wants to be a marine biologist. And she can't find a marine biologist who has gone completely debt-free. That's okay. What Mara needs is a recipe. She just needs some kind of hint, something to lead her along this path of a debt-free college degree. And guess what? Anthony ONeal has this amazing recipe in this book, Debt-Free Degree. So what would your advice be to Mara here, not knowing what degree she's going into?
You know, man, I think just a couple of weeks ago, you guys had one of my good friends on, Ken Coleman, and he wrote the book called The Proximity Principle. I would recommend to her get my book, Debt-Free Degree, but then also get his book, The Proximity Principle, because he talks about just being in the proximity of others who have done something similar to what you want to do. So just because you may not be able to find someone who's done your specific degree, like what you said, Ryan, was get around people who are going to school debt-free, who have a heart, who have a passion, who are living with intentionality, who are focused right now. That's the medicine. That's the people who you need to be around. So once you can get a hold of that, you can apply that now to your life.
Amen, man. The proximity principle, that is a great recommendation, man. I didn't even think about that. What I was going to tell Mara, too, is like, this is the fun of life.
Yeah.
And this is actually what makes you a better expert at living life, is when you can kind of take someone's recipe and then you can manipulate or maybe take a few ingredients out of that recipe to make it your own. You don't have to find someone who has exactly done your degree, who has been a marine biologist and went through college for free. But like you said, Anthony, just find people who have at least got their degree for free. Start there, and then you can start tweezing out ingredients and make your own. But what's great about your book, Anthony, is you have advice in here about, you know, basically up from high school until you graduate college on how you can actually get grants and help yourself become debt-free. And it's a step-by-step process. It isn't easy. Like, it definitely takes a lot of work.
It's not going to be easy, and I'll say that up front. It's not going to be easy at all. But I would rather.
What's easy is taking out a bunch of loans. That's easy right now. It's going to be really difficult on you later.
That's easy. That's normal. People are not buying homes. They're not getting married. They're not having a family because they have all these student loans and consumer debt. And so for me, inside of this book, what I'm teaching this generation up front is like, hey, work hard for 4 years, work hard for 6 years if you're going to get your master's degree. I'd rather you work hard for 4 to 6 years than spend the next 20, 30, 40 years wishing that you would have worked hard for those 4 or 6 years.
Yeah.
You know, I met a young lady, 88 years old. She's young to me. And she was telling me that she has to work. She is cleaning up hotel rooms because she doesn't have any retirement. She doesn't have any savings. And she was like, son, just please use your youthfulness wisely. She took out student loans. She has consumer debt. She has a lot of stuff over that what we both teach against. And I just don't want to see that for no one listening to this podcast, watching us online. And I just really want to see them do better.
Yeah.
Mark, I want to congratulate you for moving forward past some what you call toxic relationships. And Ryan and I often talk about having to let those relationships go so that we can move forward, start new, empowering relationships, surround ourselves with people who are supportive. And that's what she's trying to find right now. I don't know of a specific platform where I'm like, yes, you can go to nursingdegree.com and find other nurses who have graduated debt-free or other marine biologists or whatever. But you can find people who are going to empower you along the way, along this journey. And as you move forward and you realize, okay, this is what I want to do with my life, I'm surrounding myself with people who care, and I care about you so much that I don't want you to be just burdened by an excessive amount of debt going forward.
Amen. What did you say about with parents? It's like, it's not your job to force your kids what to do, but it's your job to tell them no when they're going to ruin their financial life for the next few years.
Yeah, it's not your job to pretty much, you got to work together to build their future. Because what we're seeing is our students take a kid's approach to an adult decision. And so we need our young people to be guided by their parents, make sure that our parents are helping them make better decisions so in the future they can say thank you.
Yeah, so what we're trying to do for you here, Mara, is don't go into debt. That's she's already got that in her head. So we're here to be your parents and say no, like, don't ruin your financial life over the next few years. And yeah, there are absolutely people out there whose recipes you can take from. The other thing I love about what the Dave Ramsey team always says, maybe it was Dave who came up with this, but I know they all say it is, live like no one else now.
So you can live and give like no one else tomorrow.
Yeah, amen.
Yeah. Well, Mara, I'm going to send you a copy of our book, Minimalism, Live a Meaningful Life. I think you'll find 2 chapters in there particularly interesting and useful. There's a relationships chapter in there, so it talks about letting go of those toxic relationships, but then how do you surround yourself with people who are empowering? And then there's also a passions chapter in there as well, or what you might say vocation or career or creativity. And those are two of the main values in Ryan's in my life. I think you'll find value in that book, Minimalism, Live a Meaningful Life. If you like our podcast, you'll like the audiobook version of that, or you can get the book or the ebook version as well. Podcast Sean will send that to you. All right, Ryan, what time is it?
You know what time it is? It is time for our lightning round, where we answer questions from social media.
Indeed we do. We are at The Minimalists on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and at Anthony ONeal.
Do you remember this from when you were with us in Birmingham?
I do.
Yeah,
Boy, these
so-
are some good questions.
So what we try to do here is answer the question with a short, shareable, less than 140 character response. Okay. We put the text in the show notes so you can copy and share our pithy answers on social media if you like. And now Jessica puts all of our quotes in one place, minimalmaxims.com. But really, we can just ramble on a bit until we find a good answer.
All right, our first question is from Misa. What is a reasonable amount of money to invest in a college education?
Well, here's my pithy answer, then I want to talk to Anthony about this here. We have the saying quite often. People say, well, you get what you pay for. And sometimes that's true. Mm-hmm. But my pithy answer is you don't always get what you pay for. Sometimes you're going to pay $250,000 for an education, but you're going to be broke. And you may even be broken by the whole process and feel trapped now. You've created your own lavishly decorated prison cell. And most degrees, I mean, maybe not most, but many degrees, maybe even most, are not worth the money you spend on them. And all degrees are certainly not created equal. So, Anthony, can we talk a little bit about, what are some ways that we can save money on education, whether that is a going to community college for a while, maybe it's a in-state tuition.
Man, you're hitting it on the head, man. I say this to everyone: your dream school is an affordable school. An affordable school is a school you can graduate from debt free. So we got to change the definition of dream schools. And so you guys are right. I mean, right now, going to college, getting a degree is expensive, but it doesn't have to be that expensive. So the average dream school, not dream school, but the average in-state school will cost you about $6,000 to $11,000. So if we stay in state, okay, and if we live at home, and let's say we eat at home, let's do the math. If we take $10,000 and divide that into 12, that's $833 a month. You can drive for Uber and pay cash for college. It's not going to, you don't have to borrow a dime, have to do nothing. Let's say, for an example, you do stay on the dorms and you do, that means you're going to be about $1,600 a month. So there are ways to do it. But I do not believe, I got to go back to you on this one and agree with you. Like, I'm not borrowing a dime for college. If you step back and do the research, man, like for an example, in the state of North Carolina, UNC Pembroke, a school that probably a lot of people haven't heard of because they're not this big Ivy League school, but they're a 4-year, fully accredited, nice, solid school. $500 a semester. Wow. For in-state. That's $1,000 a year. That's $4,000 for a 4-year degree.
It's amazing.
And that's just their tuition. So if you stay at home, you can take care of that $4,000 in 1 year.
And in the book you talk about, most employers are not, they're not going to judge where you went to school. I mean, there's a handful of schools. There's maybe 6 to 15 schools, whether it's Harvard or Brown. We had Emily Oster from Brown University. There's some Ivy League schools where there's half a dozen to a dozen of them, basically.
But you know what's funny? Even with that example, I mean, she is a analysis. I mean, she is using her degree to write books, but like for all intents and purposes, like the degree, she could have got that degree from anywhere and still do what she's doing.
Well, she didn't get
today.
her degree at Brown. I think she went to Chicago, but she's teaching at Brown, and there's a level of prestige from some of these universities that will set you above the rest of the pack. But most of these are really vanity. It's like having that vanity license plate or any other equivalent. You have that just so you can say, well, I graduated from Harvard. But like really, really most employers in the real world, if they are looking for a degree, they're looking for the degree, not where the degree came from. Now, accreditation is important. So looking at that versus an online university, something like that. So there are differences even there. But for most schools that are accredited, if you can get out of there with a degree and you can get out debt free, you're going to be in a much better position than if you, but I went to the Ohio State and now it's people don't care as much.
Hey guys, how do you know someone went to Harvard? Don't worry, they'll tell you.
Actually, I find the opposite with Harvard in particular. I think it's it's almost passe. Like our friend Adam,
right,
who's a pastor in Tennessee.
Wow.
He always says, "Well, when I went to college in Boston,"
right?
We're like, no, you went to
Harvard.
college. Yeah, you went to Harvard.
Yeah, man. It's funny. You were talking about community college. When I was even reading that in your book, I wish I would have known about going to college for free, a community college. I just had no clue. But I will say, there's something. I mean, now being, I'll be 38. This is October, the month that we're recording this. So I'll be 38 this month. And I can totally, accept going to a community college, not thinking anything of it. However, at 18 years old, there's this stigma of like, oh, I got to go to community college. And I guess
it's like that hatchback isn't cool, so I can't drive.
Right, exactly. But I guess I just want to point out that, like, I know that that's probably, like, if there's like some high school kids or even college kids listening to this, like, there's no way I'm going to community college. Your 38-year-old self will thank you for going to community college rather than racking up a bunch of debt. My pithy answer here, I really wanted to address this word reasonable, because reasonable for me is going to be different for Josh. It's going to be different for Anthony.
Absolutely.
So to just say, oh, well, here's a reasonable amount of money that you can afford. I mean, that's perspectival. So here's my pithy answer. Most purchases are unreasonable if you're in debt. So most purchases, like, you got to put food on the table. If you're in debt, buy food. Yeah, you got to put gas in your car. Go buy gas. But there are a lot of purchases that are unreasonable if you are in debt.
Yeah, and so maybe we often think of it as the opposite, though, right? Like, well, the reasonable thing to do is to go and get the loans to go to the best school. And, I really don't want to go to I live in Ohio, and I really was hoping to go to Purdue, and it's out of state.
My parents will be so proud of me.
Yeah. They're actually not going to be proud of your debt. Or your stress, or your discontent, or the life you now have to live once you graduate in order to pay off the debt. And I would much rather you drive Uber, deliver pizzas during college than having to do it for a decade after you've already graduated. Or worse, in my case, I never graduated college, but I had student debt. And so it was like the worst of both worlds.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, I think that when we're looking at being reasonable, maybe it's get a little bit unreasonable relative to what the status quo is, because otherwise, as you're saying, the debt is the normal thing. But to me, really, that should be what is unreasonable.
Man, Sean, Sean could tweet that. To get reasonable, start to, what did you say, live unreasonable for the status quo? Sean will tweet it out later, make it look real pretty in post. Figure it out. All right, before we get into our added value segment and our listener tips today, it looks like we have a bunch more surprise questions this week.
Indeed, we do, Ryan. Let's see some of these questions here. Do you support the proposal to cancel all student loan debt? Why or why not? How? We're going to argue with Anthony on this one. I have a feeling. How can we get the government to stop guaranteeing student loans? Does the lack of financial literacy in our school system create an ethical dilemma by allowing teenagers access to high interest rate loans? What info should I look for when refinancing a loan? How do you stay positive if you've accrued overwhelming amounts of debt? And plus, we have about 1 million other questions for Anthony ONeal. Also, we're going to talk about one of our most controversial statements, Ryan. There's no such thing as good debt.
My head exploded.
We're really going to unpack that. We're going to talk more about debt-free degree as well. And if you want to hear all that, you can listen to this week's Maximal episode, available exclusively on Patreon. That's right. You're currently listening to our weekly Minimal episode, but each week Ryan and I record an entirely different long-form Maximal episode, available exclusively on the Minimalists private podcast, which gives us the private space we need to talk about topics we don't usually discuss in public. Plus, Patreon is the best way for us to fund this podcast and keep it 100% advertisement free. When you subscribe to the Minimalist Private Podcast on Patreon, you'll also receive a personal link so that our Maximal episodes play in your favorite podcast app. You can find all the details and all the good stuff, including what we recorded with Anthony this week. such good conversation, very upbeat. It actually changed quite a bit from the minimal episode, where I really felt like we got into this groove and got really excited talking about different jobs students can take. So if you know someone who is a student who's getting ready to go to college, they're in college right now, or maybe someone who just has a lot of student loan debt, well, then I think this conversation is for you. You can find all the details at theminimalists.com/support. Ryan, what else you got for us this week?
Yeah, as always, read more, get informed. I just want to reiterate what you said, Josh. Anthony ONeal's a genius. This debt-free degree book of his, it is a beautiful book for parents of kids who are going to college or kids who are already in college, or if you're already taking on a little bit of debt or a lot of debt, I think this book can totally help you. And then also, I've got some voicemail comments and tips from our listeners. Check them out.
Hi, my name is Yassine Berra. I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba. I'm calling to leave a voicemail in response to the episode on jobs. There's a common thread in your work that relates to living a meaningful life, and a lot of the discussion around jobs tends to relate to finding meaningful work. And I think a shortcut to finding meaningful work is actually to just introduce the element of helping people to pretty much any kind of work. So if you were to take any sort of job and just introduce an element of helping people to the actual content of the work, that's a direct route to finding more meaning in that work. In my case, I've done just that by quitting the corporate job in order to start a social enterprise. And that's kind of my tip for this message is the concept of a social enterprise is something that people maybe want to familiarize themselves with, which is to say basically conducting any sort of typical business, but perhaps structured as a nonprofit where proceeds are used to advance some sort of social or environmental cause. And in that way, you're combining potentially the skills that you've acquired in the context of a regular job and coupling them with the idea of helping people. And I've found that to be a really, really great way to find meaning in my work.
Hi, Minimalists. This is Elizabeth from South Jordan, Utah. And I was just listening to your podcast about friends and relationships, particularly your response to Rebecca's question about how to improve relationships or move on after a relationship ends. As someone who does believe that relationships are one of the things that we take with us when we go, so to speak, I really appreciate your advice on how to take inventory of relationships to make sure that we're all staying on the right track and on the path that we want to be. I would add to your advice to Rebecca, though, just kind of a cautionary word that the idea of not settling can sometimes turn into nitpicking. And I would say that that's a very fine line, but an important one to remember, that if not settling means that you have such a long laundry list of traits that you're never able to actually commit to anyone, you're going to have a long and miserable dating life. I would also add that it's important to remember that sometimes the people who are the best for us are the ones who challenge us the most and in many ways are the most different from us. I know that's been my experience with my relationship with my husband, and I wanted to put that out there for anyone else who's listening, that just because it might be hard or challenging doesn't mean that you're settling. In some ways, you might be winning in those situations more than others.
All right, y'all. Thanks again to Anthony for joining us today. Check out his book, Debt Free Degree. You can also find him at anthonyoneal.com. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. And real quick, for right here, right now, here's one thing that's going on in the life of the Minimalists. Have you checked out our YouTube channel recently? We've got a bunch of videos over there, including 2 full seasons of living room conversations. And Ryan, I hear we might get picked up for a 3rd season.
I was wondering what LRC meant. I think we should film every time we move apartments, and we call it Josh and Ryan Move.
Josh asked Ryan to move heavy objects.
Yeah.
But we have a couple of seasons of living room conversations where we're either in my living room or Ryan's living room, and we are answering your questions, and who knows, we may even do a 3rd season coming up soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/theminimalist. If you have a comment, question, or minimalism tip for our podcast, leave us a voicemail, 406-219-7839, or you can send a voice memo to podcast@theminimalists.com. If you want our show notes in your inbox, sign up for our email list over at theminimalists.com. It's right there at the top. You just enter your email address. We'll never send you spam or junk, but we will send you our podcast show notes and also our Simple Sunday emails.
It's my favorite email list I belong to.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
So you're basically sending emails to yourself.
Yeah. Who rather would I rather get emails from, man?
That's great. For added value this week, let's listen to a song. It's called Cars at Night from, there's this new, I think they're new. I couldn't find much about them online. In fact, I texted our friend Nate Pfeiffer from Provo, and I'm like, do you have anything to do with this album? Because it sounds like you produced it. But he didn't. He didn't know who they were. It's a two-person group called By the Coast, and they have a new album. I think it's 7 songs. So is that an album? Is it an EP? I don't know.
I don't know what the kids are doing these days.
It's called You, but the song is called Cars at Night, and it's ethereal. It's beautiful. I think you're going to enjoy it. And if you leave here today with just one message, we hope it's this. Love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening, y'all.
We'll see you next time.
The Minimalists.